On January 24th, 1925, notorious gangster Johnny Torrio and his wife Anna were shot several times outside their home in Chicago. After barely surviving several gunshot wounds, Johnny handed total control of his outfit over to his longtime companion and confidant, saying to him, "It's all yours, Al. Me, I'm quitting. It's Europe for me." The man he handed it off to was Alphonse Gabriel Capone, who went on to become one of the most infamous gangsters in the world. The Godfather, The Sopranos, and of course, the very movie that uses his nickname, Scarface. But gangster films go way back in American cinema, all the way back to the Golden Age. There's always been a mythology, a lionization, a dare I say romanticization of the traditional mobster. They were smartly dressed, tough as nails, edgy, raw, and most importantly, they were white. So it was easy for them to cultivate a positive image. This ideal notion of them being noble criminals working under the oppressive regime of the law. Not helping in this case being their storied ties to bootlegging and the selling of illicit alcohol. A law that many people opposed and still regard with bewilderment to this day. All of this culminated into one rather uncomfortable truth. For a while there in the early 1900s, there was a noticeably large percentage of children who wanted to be gangsters. Don't take my word for it, take Ray Liotta.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
It's easy to fall in love with the image of the sharply dressed, tough-as-nails mafioso, without having to directly address the myriad of ugly truths under the surface. And because of this growing obsession with the mobster lifestyle, particularly by the youth, some people got a bit concerned.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
Cut to decades later. It's the late 1980s. You, an older millennial, have just gone up out of bed and it's Saturday morning. You rush downstairs to your family's giant CRT TV. Mom and Dad are out doing their own thing right now, so you have the home all to yourself. You pour yourself a bowl of sugar and carbohydrates that they call part of a balanced breakfast, and you turn the TV to channel 4 or 6 or whatever's running cartoons at the moment. And what should be on but your favorite show? Yeah, you're gonna watch TMNT! Mikey's gonna get into some mischief. Shredder's gonna be up to something bad. Raph is gonna joke to the fourth wall. Maybe the Technodrome will show up. So you watch the classic intro with bated breath and anticipation, and then the opening starts, and you see the turtles walk on screen. And with them is Zack, the fifth turtle. And your heart sinks. Because you know, this episode is going to suck. That is a very common feeling a lot of people have towards kids' sidekicks. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, it was very easy to grow to loathe it whenever a show or series would introduce a kid character. Modern cartoons at the very least have the foresight of having the child protagonist be the perspective character. Your, personal feelings on Steven Universe aside, Steven is the main character and the show is primarily told about him and through his perspective. Yet it was not uncommon for action cartoons of the 80s to introduce us to their cast of semi-adult characters, only to have plots suddenly shift and focus on unrelated child characters. And most people who grew up in this era collectively agree, this was always a bad move and it never worked out. When I watch the real Ghostbusters, I want to see the real Ghostbusters, not the junior Ghostbusters or whatever. But of course, this all leads back to the subject of today's video. The Caped Crusader. The Dark Knight. The hero of Gotham City. I am, of course, talking about...
Batman, Batman, Batman. There is a song the good folks sing.
Yes, this video was originally going to be me looking at the first ever Batman comic. Detective Comics number 27. Unfortunately, that comic was rather short and the story wasn't anything to write home about. Not helping that the plot was sorta plagiarized from a short story about another dark pulp hero, The Shadow. Bill Finger was a big fan of the character, and he wasn't quite sure how to write a crime story yet, so he just sorta borrowed from it. Shame on you, Mr. Finger. Shame. Unlike your artist collaborator, Bob Kane, who I'm sure did nothing wrong ever. Hold on, I'm getting a memo. The only interesting thing about the first ever Batman story is how Commissioner Gordon is a major character. It's cool to know that he's that old of a character. And that's kind of funny how they pretend there's a mystery about Batman's secret identity. While Gordon talks to his socialite friend, Bruce Wayne. I legit wonder how many people were surprised by this twist in 1939. But then I realized that Batman has very rarely been a solo act. Batman, for better or worse, has always been associated with another character. A character whose own origins and history intertwine greatly with his, and who provides an important pillar of support for the Dark Knight. Yes, this video is about Batman and Robin. Not the movie, though. That movie sucks. Now, it's easy to make jokes about Robin. Haha, child endangerment. What a moron Batman is. Robin sucks. He's an annoying kid character. Those are always bad. He doesn't even wear pants. No kid actually wants to see another annoying kid get in the way and be put in peril for the hero to rescue. They're stupid and they're lazy and okay, yes, I agree. The win-to-lose ratio of kid sidekick characters is pretty bleak. But hold your horses. I provide the introduction with the gangsters, see, I came back to it, to explain a point. Not only Robin's historical context, why he was made in the first place, but also to justify his existence as a whole. Why Robin, not just the character but the entity, is important for Batman's mythos. Because Robin? He's been with Batman longer than you might think. Longer than the Bat Signal, longer than Alfred, longer than even the Joker. I mean, okay, yeah, they both came out the same month, but they're like right next to each other, okay? To get back to the earlier point, children in the 1930s and 40s were being won over by the wave of mafia proliferation, or at least it must have felt like that at the time. To counter this, comic books sought to teach children the right way. This is why so many Golden Age heroes really didn't have what you would call supervillains. Sure, Superman would fight mad scientists and giant monsters on occasion, but for the most part, a lot of them just fought gangsters. Or Nazis. Those two were the big ones. A lot of early comic book villains really were just mobsters and hitmen with a theme. Heck, that was Dick Tracy's bread and butter.
Snake eyes. Ah! Maybe I teeth. Oh, hammerhead. Oh no, pussycat puss. Batman.
Pulp heroes sort of existed as a way to cut down the image of the mafioso, to reduce their mythology and show them as what they were. Violent, irrational thugs who just wanted to fleece people for all they were worth, willing to make a pretty penny doing whatever dirty work was given to them. Heck, the actual origin story of Batman pretty much highlights this. In issue 33, that goes into why Bruce Wayne disguised himself as a bat, he says, "Criminals are a superstitious and cowardly lot." The entire pulp hero genre was designed to break down the myth of the gangster, turning the cool and hard-edged mafioso into a simple petty criminal. And to help guide children along that path was their good friend Dick Grayson, aka Robin the Boy Wonder. Robin was made as a way for children to self-insert into the comic, yes, but he also presented an ideal alternative. Robin, you see, was a young boy, just like the prospective reader of this comic. But instead of looking up to and idolizing the mob killed his family. And before we continue, yes, Robin is named after Robin Hood, the outlaw, not after the bird. Which is kinda ironic knowing the context I just described. For those who don't know, yes, I consider Robin's origin story to be a bit less well-known than Batman's. Dick Grayson is a boy who grew up in the circus. His parents were killed by mobsters looking to run a protection racket, by cutting their trapeze ropes during an act. Batman then took in the young boy to protect him, as he felt he'd be the next target of the gang and their boss, Zucco. Zucco? Zucconi? Zuko?
Hello, Zuko here.
Batman then trained the young boy in hand-to-hand combat. And I will say, it was a brilliant idea to make Robin a boy who grew up a circus acrobat. It gives the kid a justifiable reason to be athletic and to be good at something in the role of a costumed hero. Bruce even comments that when it comes to swinging, he could teach him a few things. He even has a pretty decent plan for Robin. Get him to pretend to be a newspaper boy and figure out where the rackets are. Then lure Zucco out once enough of his rackets start to flounder. I'll also say I really like Zucco's design and his speech. He actually does that see thing. It isn't enough, see? You gotta get more money out of our customers, see? I want you to go to the butchers, the tailors, the laundries, and the rest and milk 'em dry, see? I thought that was just a bit some comedian did, but no, that's apparently real. It's like those anime characters that replace Desu with some random words as a vocal tick. Batman, no joke, sends him a package with a live bandit as well as a message. How the hell did he do this? Okay, Robin, I need you to get that bat. Get that bat in here. I'm sorry, Mr. Wayne. It's just really hard. Told you not to call me that on the... It's fine. Just get it in the box. It's flying all over the place, Mr. Wayne. Batman. It's flying everywhere, Batman.
Well, grab it, Robin.
Ew, it pooped on my hand.
Save that. It can be a useful fertilizer. We'll put it in with the old chum.
It's really wriggly.
Huh. You know, I like the sound of that. Old chum.
I think it bit me. Do I need a shot? We got a pretty fun scene of Robin tailing the gangsters, then engaging with them in a fight on a partially completed building. He even uses a swinging crane, showing off his acrobatic training. He's able to go toe-to-toe with a group of adults, using nothing but his guile and his acrobatic abilities. Batman then comes in to save him, obviously, and they do something interesting. Batman basically gets one of Zucco's men to write a written confession, fingering Zucco for the crimes. Now, I know the inner lawyer in you is about to call this out, how being coerced into signing a written confession is not scrutable under law. But hold on, Zucco, understandably pissed off, calls the guy a rat and pushes him off the building. Batman then reveals he had Robin bring a camera, and then takes a picture of him offing the guy, thus proving Zucco is at the very least a murderer. I feel like modern Batman would have at least saved the other gangster, and gotten Zucco on attempted murder charges, but Bruce then asks Dick if he'll go back to being a circus performer now that the people who murdered his parents have been brought to justice. But Dick refuses and says he wishes to keep being Robin. After all, he loves adventure, and what does Bruce Wayne say about this? Okay, you reckless young squirt. I ought to whale you for jumping those men alone.
And that horrible act of child abuse became one of our most beloved running gags.
So yeah, the first comic with Robin? Actually not too bad. I dare say it's more entertaining than the first Batman story. I think it says something that when the animated series introduced their own Robin origin story, they actually borrowed a fair amount from this comic, including the boss.
Tony Zuko.
Oh, that's his actual name. Oh.
That's rough, buddy.
But it's still pretty fun for, a comic from 1940. I think this comic does a good job of showing off what makes Robin work. Sure, he's not as competent as Batman, but you can see real potential there. He's able to hold his own. I think that's what makes Robin more appropriate than other kids' sidekicks. He has something to offer Bruce. He's basically a superhero in his own right. Heck, he becomes a superhero later on, being the first of what is collectively known as the Bat Family. This includes other Robins like Jason Todd and Tim Drake, Batgirls like Barbara Gordon, Cassandra Cain, and Stephanie Brown, and even other supporting characters like Alfred and, of course, Ace the Bat Hound. Going back to cartoons, there's a lot of negative feelings about Robin, since the character is often associated with these poorly implemented child characters from other series. Or he's seen as the reason those characters exist to begin with. That his breakout popularity was the reason we had to endure all these stupid kid characters ruining our favorite cartoons. And considering how much people like to focus on the grim and gritty aspects of Batman, it's raised the question, does modern Batman even need a Robin anymore? What does Robin or Batgirl or Batwoman even do for Batman? Don't they just mess things up? Why can't Batman just be by himself all the time? Fighting gangsters and mutants and mental patients. Being a cool detective and badass martial artist. Doesn't having a kid sidekick just get in the way of all that? And, okay, yes, there are good solo Batman stories, don't get me wrong. But I think people who approach it from this angle are missing the bigger picture. About Batman and about Bruce Wayne. A common refrain that you hear is that Superman is the costume that Clark Kent wears, whereas Bruce Wayne is the costume that Batman wears. And I feel like that's a bit of a simplification. Now, yes, the Playboy billionaire is not Bruce Wayne, that is a disguise, but the angry guy in a bat costume flying around Gotham City punching people? I don't think that's the real man either. I mean, maybe on his worst days, but the real man behind the mask is the one sitting behind the computer, contemplating things in the dark with a drink in his hand. That is the real Bruce Wayne. No wonder so many nerds like him. The man behind the mask is quiet and introspective. He's driven and contemplative, and incredibly goal-oriented. But he's not sociable, and he's not good at expressing himself. Sure, he can put on a debonair face, one of his many talents, but that's all that it is. He's not good at forming meaningful connections. Traumatized by an event in his youth, the man behind the mask wants to frighten criminals and make Gotham City safe again, so that no young boy has to go through the same thing he went through. It's his obsession, and it is one that he has wholly committed himself to. But there's a real danger there. All of Batman's villains are in some way dark reflections of him. How quickly his ambition and his use of fear could turn him into a mockery of what he once stood for. And it's here the Bat Family steps in, to keep that man behind the mask grounded. Not just at the Batcave, but out in the field too. They're the only people who have seen the man behind the mask, who saw something admirable about him, and even learned to love him. They're the only people he can be himself around, and they're the only ones that can drag him back if he goes too far. Batman is an introvert obsessed with this one hobby that, hey cool, other people are into it. Again,
There's a reason that nerds like Batman.
Dick Grayson was the first real example of this. A child who went through something very similar to what he went through, but he had someone who could empathize with him, and help direct his talents towards something productive. The man behind the mask got to know what it was like to be a father through Dick Grayson, and in so doing, he was able to grow and mature himself. Batman leads a double life, but not in the same way that Superman or Spider-Man does. His actual double life is at home with his family, and all the troubles and drama that come with it. And Dick Grayson was the key to unlocking that second life. So I think that we all owe him an apology. Thank you, Dick Grayson. I promise I will never become a 1930s mobster.
A superstitious, cowardly lot. They plan and plot, but they always get caught. Their evil schemes all come to naught. A superstitious, cowardly lot.
Come on, it took me weeks to get tickets for this show. It's Shway.
It's Schwarbage.